Alien girl guides human through an archive, but human finds files about a future with her. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's return to our main character, Daniel Hayes. As the sliding doors of the Celestine Archive whispered open and a rush of cool, processed air brushed across his face like a quiet warning. The lights inside glowed a soft turquoise, humming in steady pulses that reminded him of a giant mechanical heartbeat buried under the moon's surface. The floors beneath his boots vibrated with a faint, continuous thrum, as if the entire facility were thinking. He tightened his grip on the badge clipped to his jacket, the plastic warm from his palm, and stepped inside. Shelves rose in impossible heights on both sides, thin metallic ribs holding crystalline data slabs that shimmered like frozen lightning. Somewhere deep within, a soft chime drifted toward him. And then he saw her. Leora Sereth emerged from behind a column of floating hollow screens, her turquoise skin catching the glow like polished sea glass, silver markings along her temples flickering with gentle light. Her voice was calm, almost melodic, when she said, "Daniel Hayes, Earth Consultant, you're earlier than expected." Her eyes, bright, almost too reflective, studied him in a way that made him straighten unconsciously. "Yeah," he murmured, letting out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "Couldn't sleep. Figured I'd get a head start." "Humans often rush toward what they don't understand," she replied, turning gracefully as a panel slid open beside her. "Follow me." The archive responds better to confidence than hesitation. He wasn't sure if that was a warning or just her version of friendly advice. As he followed, the air changed texture, from cool to crisp, like stepping into a room full of charged static. Lights rippled above them, reacting to her presence. She moved lightly, her steps soundless, as if the archive itself carried her forward. Daniel tried not to stare, focusing instead on the rows of data slabs arranged with unsettling precision. Some glowed warm gold, some soft blue, and others clicked with faint harmonic tones as they passed. "Everything stored here," she said, "contains events your species would consider classified, lost, or inconvenient to remember." "Sounds charming," he muttered. She didn't smile, but a flicker of amusement passed through the silver lines on her skin like a shimmer of quicksilver. They stopped at a circular platform where a translucent console hovered at waist height. Leora gestured, and files spiraled upward in gentle arcs, each labeled in flowing alien script. Daniel leaned in. His name wasn't here. Not yet. But he felt something in the air, an almost imperceptible pull, the sense that the archive was aware of him in a way that made the hair on his arms rise. Leora watched him quietly. "The archive holds only what is permitted. Nothing more." Her voice echoed softly, weighted with a meaning he couldn't place. Daniel swallowed, trying to shake the strange chill settling in his chest. Something about this place, about her, felt like standing at the edge of a moment that hadn't happened yet. He didn't know why. He didn't know what waited deeper inside. But he kept walking. Daniel moved deeper into the archive beside Leora, the air shifting with every step as if the corridors adjusted to their presence. The hum of the systems grew quieter here, almost reverent, like a held breath waiting for release. Thin beams of light crossed overhead, scanning slowly, casting soft reflections across Leora's markings that pulsed like living circuitry. Daniel caught himself staring before looking away, pretending to study a nearby data column rising at least 30 feet toward the vaulted ceiling. "This section processes contextual histories," Leora said, brushing her fingertips along a floating panel. Symbols rearranged themselves instantly, reacting to her touch. "Not facts. Interpretations. How your species and mine record meaning." Daniel whistled under his breath, the sound swallowed quickly by the acoustic dampeners. "On Earth," he said, "we barely agree on the meaning of last year, let alone the past 1,000. Meaning is never stable," she replied softly, "but it is still worth preserving." As they walked, a faint chime echoed from somewhere ahead. Leora paused, tilting her head in a way Daniel had already learned meant She was listening to something he could not hear. Her expression shifted, subtle but clear, the silver lines along her cheek dimming. A branch. Request has been opened, she murmured. Unscheduled. Meaning what? Daniel asked. She hesitated, then began walking again, faster this time. He fell into step beside her. A branch request is a query into correlation timelines. They are not harmful, but they require authorization. Only archivists or designated researchers can initiate them. So someone is poking around where they should not be? Daniel asked. Possibly. Her tone had cooled, but Daniel sensed something else beneath it. Concern. As they rounded a curve, the hall opened into a circular room lined with hundreds of floating displays that rotated slowly like planets in orbit. Each sphere contained faint snapshots of events, people, or locations. Some glowed bright, some dim, but all radiated a quiet sense of significance. Leora approached the central console, her hand hovering just above the control band. The metal chimed softly, recognizing her. A single sphere drifted forward. It was small, the light inside flickering uncertainly, as if resisting clarity. Leora frowned. This request is linked to you, she said. Daniel blinked. I did not touch anything. I know, she replied, her voice low, thoughtful. The archive initiates branch requests when external data references a subject strongly. It is uncommon, but not impossible. She expanded the sphere with a gesture. The light inside brightened, revealing blurred silhouettes and fragments of text that dissolved before forming fully. Daniel leaned closer, the glow reflecting off his eyes. What am I looking at? Incomplete correlations, she said. The system is trying to form a timeline involving you, but it cannot stabilize the variables. He exhaled slowly, a knot forming in his stomach. Is that normal? For most individuals, yes. For someone newly added to the archive, yes. Her gaze shifted to his face, studying him with a depth that made him hold still. But for someone whose timeline intersects with restricted branches, no. Daniel straightened, the air suddenly too thin. I do not have any restricted branches. Leora's markings brightened, a subtle ripple along her skin. That is what we are here to confirm. Another chime sounded, sharper this time, and the sphere flickered with a brief, almost recognizable image before dissolving back into light. Daniel felt the hair on his arms lift. Leora slowly turned to him. The archive is searching for something connected to you, she said quietly, and it is not finished. The sphere's glow faded into a soft halo, leaving Daniel standing in a silence that felt heavier than the room itself. The air in the circular chamber shifted again, a faint current brushing across his arms as if the archive were exhaling. Leora stepped closer to the console, her markings pulsing with a slow, deliberate rhythm. The system is attempting to resolve an unfinished connection, she said, tapping a sequence of symbols. But it keeps looping. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck, aware of the warmth from the machinery around them. Maybe it is a glitch. The archive does not glitch, she replied gently. It recalibrates. It waits. It warns. A soft chime echoed, more subdued than before, and a secondary column of light rose from the floor. Within it, thin lines of text scrolled upward in an unfamiliar script. Leora scanned them quickly, the glow reflecting off her eyes. It is referencing older files, she murmured. Ones tied to predictive models and used for decades. I do not understand why. Daniel hesitated before asking. Predictive as in possible futures. She lifted her gaze toward him, and there was a stillness in her expression that made him focus entirely. Possibility models. They are not direct timelines, but they analyze convergence patterns. When two individuals influence each other in measurable ways, the system records the correlation. Daniel gave a slow exhale. And I am somehow influencing something I have not done yet. It seems so. Her voice was soft, almost careful. Leora moved to the edge of the console, placing her palm against a small circular sensor. The room dimmed instantly. Only the two of them remained illuminated by the quiet columns of light. Daniel felt the shift like a subtle tightening in his chest. This chamber isolates perception, she explained. No external observers. No passive data logging. Why do we need that? He asked. She paused, and for the first time since he met her, Leora looked uncertain. Because the archive should not be initiating searches involving you without a clear record of origin. Something is prompting it. Something outside standard parameters. Daniel tried to make light of it, though his palms felt warm. Maybe it just likes me. Her expression softened at the edges, a brief shimmer of amusement warming the silver lines on her skin. The archive does not like or dislike, but it responds to patterns. And right now, it sees you as a variable. Worth tracing. She turned back to the sphere. The image inside rippled again, trying to form. This time it held for a heartbeat longer. Daniel saw a faint outline of two figures standing beside a large window, starlight spreading across them. One figure had familiar shoulders and posture. The other had the unmistakable silhouette of Leora, her markings glowing brighter than they did in the present moment. The image dissolved before he could fully process it. His breath caught anyway. Leora had seen it too. Her fingers twitched slightly at her side, a tiny movement he would have missed if he had not been watching her closely. "This is why we must proceed carefully," she said, her voice quiet but steady. "The system is referencing a possible convergence between us." Daniel felt his pulse pick up, steady but noticeable. "Does that happen often? Between archivists and consultants?" "No," she answered. "Not like this." Another chime rang, softer this time, almost like an echo fading down a long hallway. Leora stepped back from the console. "There is a reason the archive is showing you these fragments, but it is not ready to reveal more." Daniel looked toward the dimmed corridor beyond the chamber, the faint glow outlining the path ahead. "So what do we do now?" Leora turned toward him, her expression calm but unreadable. "We keep going. The archive has chosen to involve you. That means the answers are deeper inside." Daniel followed Leora out of the circular chamber, the dim lights brightening as they stepped into the next corridor, as if the archive itself acknowledged their decision to continue. The air felt warmer here, carrying a faint scent of ionized metal and something floral that Daniel could not name. Leora moved with purpose, her steps smooth and quiet, but he noticed the way her silver markings shifted in patterns that seemed slightly faster than before, like subtle currents running under her skin. "This section is restricted to archivists," she said as a tall set of transparent panels parted for them without a sound. "It stores relational structures, patterns of influence between individuals, cultures, and events." "You mean connections," Daniel said. "Yes, or the blueprint of them." The new hall was narrower, with long beams of amber light stretching across the floor like rails. Along the walls floated clusters of tight spheres, each one glowing with a soft pulse that gave the impression of sleeping thoughts. As Daniel walked beside Leora, some of the spheres brightened slightly when he passed, recognizing a variable they had been waiting for. Leora paused at one such sphere, her eyes narrowing. "It is reacting to you," she said quietly. Daniel lifted his hand, watching the sphere brighten again as if greeting him. "Is that supposed to happen?" "Only when an individual is part of an active correlation," she replied, "and usually after it has been formally registered." Daniel lowered his hand slowly. "I did not register anything, which is why this is unusual." She gestured, and the sphere drifted toward the center of the hall where a platform unfolded from the floor. The sphere hovered above it, its glow expanding until it resembled a soft lantern suspended in air. Leora stepped to the console beside it. "This should show us the relational path," she said. "Not the future, just the pattern." She activated the display, and the sphere stretched into a thin ribbon of light, unfurling like a delicate thread. Symbols shimmered along its length. From Daniel's side, they looked like tiny constellations shifting through shapes he could not decipher. Leora studied them closely, her expression still but her markings bright. "There are 2 anchor points," she murmured. "Yours is new. Very new." Daniel leaned slightly closer. "And the second?" Leora hesitated. The hesitation was brief, but it was real. "Me," she said finally. The ribbon pulsed once, as if confirming her words. The glow spread outward, swirling around both of them in a slow, gentle arc. Daniel felt a strange warmth settle across his chest, subtle and quiet, like the weight of a distant possibility resting on him. "So the archive thinks we are connected," he said. "It does not think," Leora corrected, though her voice was softer than before. "It detects. It maps. It anticipates patterns based on proximity, influence, and emotional alignment." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Emotional alignment. It measures resonance," she replied, looking away from him for the first time since they entered the hall. Not feelings. Patterns. The ribbon pulsed again, brighter this time, and Leora's markings responded with a faint glow that mirrored it. Daniel noticed, and she realized he noticed. For a moment, the ambient hum of the archive felt distant, replaced by something quieter and somehow heavier. Leora exhaled, a small controlled breath. We should move. To the next sector, she said, closing the display. The archive will continue processing this sequence. There may be more data ahead. Daniel nodded, though something in him lingered on the glow that had wrapped around them. As they continued walking, the hall ahead darkened slightly, then brightened slowly with a pale blue light, revealing another chamber waiting for them deeper inside. The path forward felt different now, as if the archive had shifted its attention entirely toward the two of them. And Daniel could not shake the feeling that whatever waited next had already begun forming the moment he stepped through the archive's doors. The next chamber opened with a gentle shift in pressure, the kind that made Daniel's ears adjust, as if he had stepped into a room sealed from the rest of the world. The walls curved upward into a dome of pale blue light, the glow rippling like reflections on still water. Thin strands of translucent material hung from the ceiling, drifting softly as if moved by a breeze that did not exist. Leora stepped ahead of him, her silhouette outlined in the ambient glow. Her silver markings brightened slightly as she crossed the threshold, almost as if the room recognized her. This is the interpretive nexus, she said, her voice quieter here, as though even sound behaved differently within the chamber. It translates abstract data into perceptual forms. Daniel looked around, watching the strands sway gently as he passed beneath them. In English, he said, that means the archive is about to show us something. Yes, Leora answered, but it will choose the form, not us. At the center of the room, a circular platform rose from the floor, smooth and featureless except for a faint ring of light around its edge. As soon as they approached, the ring brightened, and the air above it shimmered. A slow pulse spread outward, forming a soft haze that thickened into recognizable shapes. At first, Daniel thought it was a star map, scattered points of light drifting in loose clusters. But the points began to move, tracing paths that intertwined, diverged, then converged again. It is mapping relational potential, Leora said, watching the patterns shift. Connections that shape outcomes. Daniel studied the lines of light weaving around one another. Two of them glowed brighter than the rest. One pulsed in a steady rhythm, warm and familiar. The other shimmered with a cool, crystalline hue. They drew closer, then drifted apart, then closer again. He realized what the archive was showing them. Leora saw it too. Her hands folded gently in front of her, her expression calm but focused. The system is analyzing proximity influence, she said. It believes that your path and mine affect the archive's predictive models. Daniel swallowed, feeling a quiet pressure build in his chest. So the archive thinks we matter to each other. Leora looked at him. Her eyes reflected the shifting lights, soft but steady. It thinks our choices create measurable change. The lines of light merged for a heartbeat, brightening with a gentle flare. Daniel felt the warmth on his skin, almost like the sunlight he missed from Earth. Then the lines separated again, drifting into their own patterns. That part, Leora said softly, is undecided. Daniel stepped closer to the display. Is the archive showing us a future? No. It is showing the weight of possibilities. The strands hanging from the ceiling swayed slightly, catching the blue glow and scattering it across the dome like glittering dust. Daniel let out a slow breath. Back on Earth, we do not really think about the math behind connections. We just live them. Your species embraces uncertainty, she replied. Mine catalogs it. He glanced at her, noticing how the room's soft light traced along the curves of her markings, illuminating patterns he had never seen before. Do you? He asked quietly. Leora's gaze held his for a long moment. I am learning, she said. Another pulse of light rose from the platform, brighter this time, spreading through the chamber like a quiet ripple. The archive was not finished, and for the first time since entering the facility, Daniel felt that whatever it wanted to reveal next was waiting for both of them together. The pulse of light faded slowly, settling into a quiet shimmer that hovered above the platform like a breath held in suspension. Daniel stepped back instinctively, not because he was afraid, but because the room felt suddenly aware of him, aware of both of them. as if the archive itself had paused to listen. Leora watched the fading glow with a contemplative stillness, her silver markings dimming to a softer shade as the chamber settled. The Nexus is attempting to stabilize the pattern, she said. It needs more data. It wants a clearer understanding of us. Us, Daniel repeated, the word catching somewhere between curiosity and something gentler. Leora turned to him, her expression unreadable yet open at the edges. Patterns only form when two influences interact. The archive cannot map an isolated variable. Daniel let out a breath through his nose, slow and steady. On Earth we call that a relationship. In the archive we call it a convergence. She moved away from the platform, toward a narrow passageway on the far side of the dome. It had not been visible before, but now it glowed with a pale white outline, a doorway waiting for acknowledgement. Daniel followed her, the air cooling as they approached. The passageway was lined with reflective panels that showed faint impressions of light rather than true reflections. When Daniel glanced sideways, he did not see his own face, but a soft blur shaped like potential instead of certainty. "This is strange," he murmured. "That is the point," Leora replied. "The archive does not want you to see what you already know. It wants you to see what you could become." They emerged into a smaller room, circular like the last, but far quieter. No strands hung from the ceiling. No glowing lines traced the floor. Instead, a single transparent monolith rose at the center, humming with a tone so low it felt more like a vibration in Daniel's chest than a sound. "A projection column," Leora explained. "It displays interpretive paths based on emotional resonance." Daniel raised a brow. "Emotional?" "Yes," she said, meeting his eyes with an honesty that surprised him. "The archive has sensed resonance between us. It wants to understand it." Before Daniel could respond, the column brightened. A soft ripple spread across its surface, forming an image not entirely clear, but not entirely abstract either. It resembled two figures standing near one another, the shapes blurred but undeniably paired. They were outlined by a soft glow that shifted in color, warm and cool blending together without settling. Daniel felt his throat tighten, not with fear, but with a kind of awe. "It is not showing a prediction," Leora said quietly. "Only a reflection of influence." The shapes pulsed, then drifted slightly closer. A faint warmth spread across the room, subtle as a rising memory. Daniel stepped toward the column, his voice low. "Does it always show two figures?" "Only when two individuals share alignment." Her markings glowed faintly brighter as she approached the column beside him. The figures responded instantly, shifting more clearly into silhouettes that echoed their height and posture. Daniel's pulse picked up. "It is us," he said. Leora did not deny it. Instead, she placed her hand lightly near the surface of the column, not touching but close enough that the glow shifted. Her voice was softer than he had ever heard it. "The archive has registered our connection. It is telling us that neither of our paths remain unchanged by the presence of the other." Daniel watched the silhouettes merge briefly in a flicker of light before splitting into two distinct forms again, still close but separate. "So what does that mean?" he asked. Leora looked at him, eyes calm, steady, and more open than before. "It means the archive is waiting. It wants to see which path we choose next." Daniel stood beside the projection column, watching the blurred silhouettes flicker in and out of clarity, as if the archive itself could not decide what shape their connection should take. The room felt warmer than before, the low hum from the monolith resonating gently through the floor and into the soles of his boots. Leora remained close, her silver markings shifting in slow waves that reflected the ambient glow. She did not touch the column again, but her nearness alone kept the figures illuminated. "The archive is reacting to proximity," she said quietly. "It is attempting to refine its interpretation based on our alignment." Daniel let out a slow breath. "So if we step closer together, it would—" "What?" "Update the picture." "Likely," she replied. Then, with a slight tilt of her head, she added, "But it may also store that alignment permanently." Daniel paused, feeling the weight behind her words. "And that is a risk." Leora folded her hands gently in front of her, considering the glowing silhouettes. "It is not forbidden, but it is significant. Permanent alignment markers are rarely assigned between an archivist and an external consultant." Daniel looked at her, reading the subtle tension in her posture. She was calm, composed, but there was an unspoken layer beneath her tone. "You are worried about what this means for you," he said softly. "For us," she corrected. The column pulsed as if responding to the pronoun. Leora stepped back from the monolith, giving them both space to think. The glow dimmed slightly without her near, but it did not disappear. Daniel studied the faint outlines still hovering inside the column's transparent core. "If you want to stop here," he said, "we can. We do not have to see more." Leora turned toward him, her eyes reflecting the cool blue light of the room. "The archive has already recognized the pattern," she said. "Stopping does not erase it. It only leaves the interpretation incomplete." A soft chime sounded from somewhere above them, like distant glass tapping once against another. Leora's head lifted slightly. "It is requesting further input," she murmured. "It wants confirmation that this alignment is intentional." Daniel blinked. "Intentional? How does it expect us to confirm that?" "By choice," she said. "The archive records choices, not assumptions." She walked slowly around the column until she stood opposite him, the light placing her in a soft halo. "If we both approach the center platform, it will interpret that as a mutual decision. A convergence." Daniel felt his heartbeat quicken, though not from fear. It was the weight of meaning. The archive did not deal in romance or emotion the way humans did. It dealt in influence, resonance, the shaping of paths. And yet everything about this moment felt deeply human. He met her gaze across the projection column. "Do you trust me?" Leora held his eyes for several seconds, the silver along her temples glowing with an almost tranquil steadiness. "I would not have brought you this far if I did not." The room fell utterly silent. The column awaited their movement. Daniel stepped forward first, onto the faint ring of light around the base. Leora followed a heartbeat later. The instant both of their feet touched the illuminated edge, the column flared, brighter than before, the glow rising in a soft wave that bathed the entire chamber. The blurred silhouettes within sharpened just enough to show the two figures standing side by side, their outlines nearly touching. Leora's breath caught, barely audible. "The archive has registered convergence," she whispered. Daniel felt the warmth of the light settle across his shoulders like a quiet acknowledgement. "What happens now?" he asked. Leora looked at the brightened column, her voice steady but softer than he had ever heard it. "Now," she said, "the archive shows us the path that convergence unlocks." The chamber brightened as if the walls themselves inhaled, pulling in every trace of light before releasing it in a slow, deliberate glow that filled the space with a soft radiance. Daniel felt the warmth settle across his shoulders and arms, not hot, but steady, like the gentle heat of sunlit metal. The projection column responded immediately to their shared presence on the illuminated ring. The blurred figures within sharpened again, not into faces or details, but into clearer silhouettes that mirrored their stance, their distance, their alignment. Leora stood across from him, her posture straight but not rigid, her silver markings flowing with shifting lines that glowed brighter than he had seen before. She watched the column with quiet focus, but something in her gaze softened when she glanced toward him. The column released a low harmonic tone, resonant enough that Daniel felt it at the base of his spine. Then, slowly, the silhouettes inside the column stepped forward. Not the real Daniel or Leora, but their projected echoes. Two soft outlines moving from separate paths into a single arc of light. Daniel inhaled sharply. "This is not showing the future," Leora said, her voice gentle, aware that he needed the anchor. "It is showing what becomes possible now that convergence is confirmed." "Possible," Daniel repeated, more to ground himself than to question her. The projected figures moved through a series of soft, shifting scenes. In one, they stood before a large window overlooking a starfield, the glow around them warm and steady. In another, they walked through a vast hangar filled with humanitarian supplies, working side by side. In a third, they were seated at a round table with other species, their silhouettes bathed in pale light that hinted at diplomacy rather than conflict. None of the images were explicit, none were romantic or predictive, but every one of them held resonance, connection, and the unmistakable weight of shared purpose. "These are interpretive sequences," Leora said, stepping slightly closer to the column. "They are not telling us what will be. They are telling us that our paths now influence a wider set of outcomes." Daniel watched the images shift, slow and steady. each one carrying the quiet suggestion that the universe itself had opened a new door. So this happens because we chose the convergence, he said. Because we acknowledged it. Yes, she said. The archive required choice. Not logic, not command. Choice. A soft shimmer pulsed from the column, drifting outward like a wave of faint stardust that dissolved before it touched the floor. The silhouettes faded, replaced by a single glowing thread that rose from the monolith like a strand of living light. It hovered between them, humming with a gentle resonance. Leora exhaled. A resonance tether, she explained. It forms when two individuals share a convergence that influences multiple timelines. It is not binding. It is not a prediction. It is simply an acknowledgement. Daniel lifted his hand slowly, watching the thread tilt toward him, sensing the faint warmth emanating from it. It is almost like the archive is blessing the connection, he said. Leora blinked, the silver along her temples shimmering. That is not how my people describe it. But it is not inaccurate. Another pulse flickered through the thread, drifting lightly toward Leora. She raised her hand in response, her fingertips hovering inches from the glow. The resonance between them increased, subtle but undeniable, as if the archive's interpretation was aligning with their very presence. Daniel lowered his voice. Does this change anything for you? Leora looked at him fully then, her expression steady but open in a way that made the chamber feel almost intimate despite its vastness. It changes what the archive expects, she said softly. But what it means for me, that is my choice. The thread dimmed, drifting upward until it dissolved into the dome of light above them. The column lowered its glow, signaling the end of the sequence. Daniel let the silence wash over them. Leora stepped beside him, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched, her voice barely louder than a breath. The archive has one more sector to show us, she said. The final interpretation. Daniel nodded once, ready for whatever waited ahead. Leora gestured toward a newly opened passage, its outline glowing faintly with invitation. Together, they stepped toward it, the echo of the resonance tethers still warm in the air behind them. The final passageway revealed itself with a soft expansion of light, widening from a thin outline into an open arch that breathed cool air into the corridor. Daniel felt the temperature shift first, a gentle chill sweeping across his skin like early morning wind. Leora stepped beside him, her silver markings dimming into a calm, steady glow, as if preparing for something the archive considered sacred. They entered together. The room beyond was unlike any they had seen. It was vast but quiet, illuminated not by panels or glowing strands, but by a single suspended sphere of pale white light hovering high above them, its glow cascading downward in slow waves. The floor beneath their feet looked like polished stone but carried a faint vibration, as though it were listening. Leora inhaled carefully. This is the origin vault, she said. The archive's deepest interpretive core. Daniel scanned the space. What does it hold? Not predictions, she replied. Not possibilities. Only truths about alignment. The vault responded to her voice. A soft ring of light appeared around them, encircling their steps. Daniel watched it brighten, forming a gentle halo that anchored itself to their presence. Then the suspended sphere above them pulsed once. A column of diffuse light dropped from it, spreading into a wide veil that hovered at eye level. Slowly, the veil gathered texture, forming gentle impressions, not full images but emotional echoes. Daniel saw a silhouette of himself, not entirely clear but recognizable in posture. Leora's shape appeared beside his, illuminated by a soft, shifting glow. Their silhouettes did not merge, did not touch, did not predict an outcome. Instead, the vault displayed moments shaped by intention rather than destiny. Daniel saw an echo of himself standing beside Leora in a crowded hall, both of them working through stacks of data slabs. Another impression showed them offering guidance to a group of new arrivals at a station. A third showed them in quiet conversation near a large observation window, starlight brushing their outlines. Each impression lasted only a second before dissolving, leaving behind only the warmth that each moment carried. Daniel swallowed. These look like glimpses of a life. Not a life, Leora corrected softly, but a path shaped by shared choice. The light shifted again, and now the veil displayed something new. A single thread of pale gold stretched from Daniel's silhouette, reaching outward. Another thread extended from Leora's. As the vault processed their convergence, the two threads bent gently toward each other, never forced, never tied, but drawn by quiet intention. When they came close, the threads glowed brighter, forming a soft juncture before continuing forward as two separate but harmonized lines. Daniel felt something settle in his chest, not a certainty, but a clarity. It is saying we do not have one path, he murmured. We simply walk parallel ones. Leora nodded, her eyes reflecting the gold resonance. Parallel until we choose where they intersect. The sphere above gave a soft, final pulse. The veil dissolved into drifting particles of light that faded before touching the ground. The ring around them dimmed and slowly receded. The vault had delivered its interpretation. Leora stepped forward and placed her palm lightly against the nearest section of the polished floor. The stone warmed beneath her touch, accepting her acknowledgement. Daniel watched her, sensing the meaning. So that is it, he said gently. The archive is finished. Yes, she replied. She rose and faced him fully. It has shown what our convergence unlocks. But what comes next is ours to decide. Daniel looked upward at the fading glow, then at Leora, whose calm presence felt steadier than anything the archive had revealed. He stepped closer, not onto a ring, not toward a projection, but simply toward her. Then I choose, he said quietly, to see where these paths lead. Leora's silver markings warmed with soft light, reflecting something more human than he expected. Then we walked them together. The vault dimmed into peaceful silence. And with no predictions left to bind them, they turned toward the exit, guided only by the quiet truth the archive had revealed.